My boss said my ADHD made me a risk. Now the whole system runs on my software. I never thought that being called hyperactive, distracted, and impossible to manage would become the keys to revolutionizing an entire company's technology infrastructure. My name is Marcus. I'm 28 years old, and for most of my life, my ADHD has been seen as nothing but a problem to be solved. But sometimes, what others perceive as our greatest weaknesses can become our most powerful strengths. If you believe that our differences can be superpowers in disguise, please hit that like button and subscribe to hear more stories about overcoming prejudice and finding your true potential. It was a rainy Tuesday morning when I walked into Dataflow Solutions for what I thought would be just another routine software development job. I had been unemployed for 3 months after my previous employer let me go, citing my inability to focus on assigned tasks and my tendency to deviate from established protocols. Those words still stung, especially because I knew they were code for "your ADHD makes you unemployable." The interview process at Dataflow had been surprisingly smooth. Sarah, the HR manager, seemed impressed by my portfolio, and the technical team appreciated my creative problem-solving approach. But there was one person who seemed less convinced: Robert Chen, the Chief Technology Officer. During our meeting, he kept glancing at his watch and asking pointed questions about my ability to stay on task and follow company procedures. "Marcus," he said, leaning back in his chair, "I notice you mentioned having ADHD on your medical forms. Can you assure me that won't interfere with your work performance? We need people who can focus on their assignments without getting distracted by every shiny object." I felt my face flush with embarrassment. This was exactly what I had been dreading. "Sir, I understand your concerns, but my ADHD has never prevented me from delivering quality work. In fact, it often helps me see solutions that others might miss." Robert exchanged a look with Sarah that I couldn't quite read. "We'll see about that," he said curtly. "If we hire you, you'll be on a 3-month probationary period. Any signs that your condition is affecting your work and we'll have to reconsider." Despite the uncomfortable interview with Robert, I got the job. My first day was a mix of excitement and anxiety. The office was a typical tech startup environment: open spaces, standing desks, and the constant hum of keyboards and coffee machines. My immediate supervisor, Janet, was a kind woman in her 40s who seemed genuinely interested in helping me succeed. "Don't worry about Robert," she whispered during my orientation. "He's old school and doesn't really understand neurodiversity. Just do your best work, and everything will be fine." But doing my best work proved to be more challenging than I expected, not because of my abilities, but because of the environment. The open office layout was a sensory nightmare for someone with ADHD. Every conversation, every phone call, every notification sound pulled my attention in different directions. I found myself constantly struggling to concentrate on the mundane tasks I was assigned. My first project was updating the user interface for the company's client portal. It was straightforward work, but I couldn't help noticing inefficiencies in the underlying code structure. The system was slow, vulnerable to crashes, and poorly optimized. While working on the UI updates, I started documenting these issues and brainstorming solutions. "Marcus," Janet said during our weekly check-in, "the UI updates are taking longer than expected. Is everything okay?" I explained my findings about the system's underlying problems. "I know this wasn't part of my assignment, but I think if we address these core issues, we could improve the entire system's performance by at least 40%. Janet looked interested but concerned. "That sounds promising, but you need to focus on your assigned tasks first. Robert is already asking questions about your progress." The next few weeks were torture. I was forced to work on surface-level updates while knowing that the system's foundation was crumbling. My ADHD brain, which naturally sees patterns and connections, was constantly alerting me to problems that I wasn't allowed to fix. It was like being a mechanic who could only paint the car while the engine was failing. During this time, I also became aware of the office dynamics. Robert had a habit of making subtle comments about certain employees who couldn't stay in their lane. He never mentioned my name directly, but everyone understood who he was talking about. Some colleagues started treating me differently, as if my ADHD made me contagious. The breaking point came during a team meeting in my second month. We were discussing a major client complaint about system crashes and slow performance. Robert was visibly frustrated and the entire development team was under pressure to find solutions. We need to identify the root cause of these issues, Robert said, pacing in front of the whiteboard. This is affecting our reputation and our bottom line. I raised my hand tentatively. I've been analyzing the system architecture and I think I know what's causing the crashes. The problem isn't with any individual component, it's with how they're integrated. The memory allocation system is a... Marcus, Robert interrupted, his voice sharp. I appreciate your enthusiasm, but you were hired to work on UI updates, not system architecture. Let's stick to our assigned roles. The room fell silent. I could feel my colleagues' eyes on me, some sympathetic, others uncomfortable. I wanted to explain that my ADHD brain naturally sees these systemic connections, that hyper-focus can be a superpower when directed at the right problems, but I didn't dare speak up again. After the meeting, Janet pulled me aside. Marcus, I know you mean well, but you need to be careful. Robert is already concerned about your situation. Don't give him more reasons to doubt you. That night, I went home feeling defeated. I called my sister Emma, who has always been my biggest supporter. Marcus, listen to me, she said after I explained the situation. You're not the problem. You're seeing things that others are missing because your brain works differently. That's not a disorder, it's a gift. It doesn't feel like a gift when everyone treats it like a liability. Then maybe it's time to show them what you can really do. Her words stuck with me. That weekend, I decided to work on my own analysis of the system. I spent hours diving deep into the code, following the logical pathways that my ADHD brain naturally traced. What I discovered was both shocking and exciting. The system crashes weren't random at all. They followed a specific pattern related to user load and data processing sequences. More importantly, I identified a way to completely restructure the data flow that would not only eliminate the crashes but also improve performance by over 60%. I also found several security vulnerabilities that could have led to major data breaches. I documented everything in a comprehensive report complete with code samples and proposed solutions. But I hesitated to share it. What if Robert saw it as another example of me not staying in my lane? What if it backfired and cost me my job? The decision was made for me the following Monday. We arrived at work to find the entire system down. The client portal was inaccessible, the database was corrupted, and 3 major clients were threatening to cancel their contracts. Robert called an emergency meeting. This is a disaster, he said, his face pale with stress. We need solutions and we need them now. I'm bringing in external consultants, but they won't be here until tomorrow. Does anyone have any ideas? The room was quiet. Finally, I raised my hand. I might have some insights into what's happening. Robert looked skeptical. Marcus, this isn't the time for amateur theories. With respect, sir, I've been studying this system for weeks. I think I know what caused the crash and how to fix it. There was a long pause. Finally, Sarah spoke up. Let's hear what he has to say. I pulled up my report and began explaining my findings. As I talked, I could see the expressions in the room changing. The technical team members started nodding, asking detailed questions, and looking genuinely impressed. Even Robert seemed to be paying attention. This is comprehensive, said Tom, one of the senior developers. Marcus, how did you identify these patterns? I took a deep breath. My ADHD brain naturally sees connections that others might miss. While everyone else was focused on individual components, I was seeing the entire system as an interconnected web. My hyper-focus allowed me to analyze thousands of lines of code and identify the underlying patterns. Robert was quiet for a moment. Can you implement these fixes? I've already written most of the code, I said, pulling up my laptop. I just need access to the development environment. The next 18 hours were a blur of coding, testing, and debugging. My ADHD hyper-focus kicked in completely and I barely noticed the passage of time. I worked through the night, sustained by coffee and the excitement of finally being able to use my brain the way it was meant to be used. By the next morning, the system was not only restored but performing better than it ever had. The client portal was faster, more secure, and completely stable. The external consultants arrived to find that the crisis had been resolved by a junior developer who had been labeled as high risk just months earlier. Robert called another team meeting. This time his demeanor was completely different. I owe Marcus an apology, he said, looking directly at me. I made assumptions about his abilities based on his diagnosis, and I was wrong. What he accomplished in one night would have taken our team weeks to figure out. But the real surprise came later that day. Sarah called me into her office, and I found her sitting with Dr. Patricia Williams, the company's chief executive officer. Dr. Williams was a legend in the tech industry, known for her innovative approach to business and her advocacy for workplace diversity. "Marcus," Dr. Williams said, smiling warmly, "I've been reviewing your work from last night. It's extraordinary. But I have to ask, how did you develop such a deep understanding of our systems so quickly?" I explained my background, my ADHD, and how my brain naturally processed information differently. Dr. Williams listened intently, asking thoughtful questions about my thought processes and problem-solving approach. "Marcus," she said finally, "I have something to share with you. I was diagnosed with ADHD when I was 35 after years of being told I was too scattered and unfocused for leadership roles. That diagnosis wasn't a limitation, it was an explanation for my ability to see patterns and connections that others missed. It's been one of my greatest assets as a CEO." I was stunned. Dr. Williams, the woman who had built a multimillion-dollar tech company, had ADHD too? "I've been watching your work," she continued, "and I see the same pattern recognition and innovative thinking that helped me build this company. I'd like to offer you a position as our new systems architecture analyst. Your job would be to do exactly what you did last night, see the big picture, identify problems before they become crises, and develop innovative solutions." The promotion came with a significant salary increase and a direct reporting line to Dr. Williams herself. More importantly, it came with the recognition that my ADHD wasn't a liability to be managed, but a cognitive difference that could drive innovation. Over the next few months, I revolutionized the company's entire technology infrastructure. My ability to hyper-focus on complex problems and see connections across different systems led to improvements that saved the company millions of dollars and attracted several new major clients. Robert, who had initially seen my ADHD as a risk, became one of my strongest supporters. He later told me that working with me had completely changed his understanding of neurodiversity in the workplace. "I realized that I was trying to fit a square peg into a round hole," he said. "Once I understood how to leverage your unique thinking style, you became our most valuable asset." The company also implemented new policies to support neurodivergent employees, including flexible work arrangements, noise-canceling headphones, and modified performance evaluations that focused on outcomes rather than traditional productivity metrics. But the most rewarding part of my transformation wasn't the professional success, it was the personal growth. For the first time in my life, I stopped seeing my ADHD as something to be ashamed of or hidden. I started talking openly about my diagnosis, sharing my strategies with colleagues, and mentoring other neurodivergent employees. During a company-wide presentation about our new system architecture, I decided to share my story. "A year ago, I was told that my ADHD made me a risk to this company," I said, looking out at the audience. "Today, every system you use runs on software that was designed by my ADHD brain. Our differences aren't deficits, they're diversities that make us stronger." The presentation received a standing ovation, and afterward, several colleagues approached me to share their own stories of neurodivergence and mental health challenges. I realized that by being open about my ADHD, I was helping to create a culture where others felt safe to be authentic about their own cognitive differences. Dr. Williams later implemented a company-wide neurodiversity hiring initiative specifically seeking out candidates with ADHD, autism, dyslexia, and other cognitive differences. She understood that innovative companies need innovative brains, and that often means brains that work differently from the mainstream. The software system I designed that night has now been licensed to other companies, generating millions in revenue and establishing data flow solutions as a leader in the industry. More importantly, it's helped dozens of other neurodivergent employees find their place in the tech world. Looking back, I realized that my ADHD was never the problem. The problem was a society that didn't understand how to recognize and nurture different types of intelligence. My brain's tendency to see patterns, make unexpected connections, and hyper-focus on complex problems wasn't a deficit to be managed, but a superpower to be unleashed. Today, I lead a team of neurodivergent developers, and our department has the highest innovation rate in the company. We've created an environment where different thinking styles are not just tolerated but celebrated. We use techniques like body doubling for accountability, provide noise-canceling headphones for focus, and allow flexible schedules that accommodate different circadian rhythms and energy patterns. The irony isn't lost on me that the same hyperactivity that got me in trouble in school now allows me to work intensely on complex problems for hours at a time. The same distractibility that teachers complained about now helps me notice details and patterns that others miss. The same inability to follow directions that frustrated my previous employers now drives me to find better, more efficient ways of doing things. My story isn't unique. There are millions of people with ADHD, autism, dyslexia, and other neurodivergent conditions who are being underestimated, overlooked, or discriminated against in workplaces around the world. But when given the right environment and opportunities, these individuals can drive innovation, solve complex problems, and create solutions that neurotypical minds might never imagine. The key is understanding that neurodiversity isn't about being less than or broken. It's about being different. And in a world that faces increasingly complex challenges, we need all types of minds working together to find solutions. If you're neurodivergent and struggling to find your place in the world, know that your differences are not deficits. They're the very things that make you uniquely qualified to solve problems that others can't. The goal isn't to become like everyone else. It's to find environments where your authentic self can thrive. For employers and leaders, I challenge you to look beyond traditional hiring practices and performance metrics. Some of your most innovative solutions might come from the candidates who think differently, work differently, or approach problems from unexpected angles. Creating inclusive environments isn't just the right thing to do morally, it's a competitive advantage in today's innovation-driven economy. The night I saved Dataflow Solutions' entire system architecture, I wasn't trying to prove that ADHD could be useful. I was simply being myself, seeing patterns, making connections, and following my natural curiosity wherever it led. That's the real lesson here. When we stop trying to force neurodivergent individuals into neurotypical boxes and instead create environments where their authentic selves can flourish, amazing things happen. My ADHD didn't make me a risk, it made me exactly the kind of innovative thinker that every forward-thinking company needs. And now, instead of hiding my diagnosis or apologizing for my different brain, I wear it as a badge of honor. Because the same mind that was once seen as a liability is now the foundation of our company's success. The most powerful moment came 6 months later, when a young intern with ADHD approached me after a presentation. "Thank you for sharing your story," she said, tears in her eyes. "I've been ashamed of my diagnosis for years, but hearing you talk about it as a strength gives me hope." That's when I knew that my journey wasn't just about personal success. It was about changing perceptions and creating opportunities for the next generation of neurodivergent innovators. Because when we embrace our differences instead of hiding them, we don't just change our own lives, we change the world.